What if David never met Bathsheba? Picture a quiet night over Jerusalem. Lanterns like distant stars. A king stepping onto a rooftop to breathe the cool air and listen to the city he loves. In the distance, a courtyard, a shadow, a life about to cross paths with his. Now imagine this. He looks, and then he looks away. No summons, no secret, no spiral. One small decision, and the arc of a kingdom bends in silence. Before we follow that path, let's remember the story as it's told. David, the shepherd who became king, a singer of psalms, a warrior with a soft heart and a fierce loyalty, crowned in Jerusalem after years of struggle. In the season when kings went off to war, David stayed behind. He saw Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, one of his elite soldiers. He brought her to the palace. She became pregnant. To cover it, David called Uriah home, but Uriah refused the comforts of home while his comrades slept in the open field. Plan failed. So David arranged Uriah's death in battle, and then married the widow. Silence didn't last. Nathan the prophet told a parable, a rich man stealing a poor man's lamb, and turned it with a thunderclap. You are the man. David broke open with repentance. He fasted. He wept. The first child from that union died. Later, a son was born, Solomon. Over the years, David's house unraveled. Amnon harmed his half-sister Tamar. Tamar's brother, Absalom, took revenge and fled, then came back with a smile and a plan. He stole hearts at the gate and led a rebellion that sent David fleeing barefoot into the night. The king returned, but the price was terrible. Absalom dead, a father weeping. Near the end, another son, Adonijah, tried to claim the throne. Bathsheba and Nathan moved quickly. David declared Solomon king. The temple rose in Jerusalem. Wisdom and splendor bloomed, and so did the weight of forced labor, taxes, and a glittering court with many foreign marriages and many altars. After Solomon's death, the kingdom split, north and south, 2 crowns, 2 roads. And tied to that story is a song we still hear in our bones, Psalm 51. Have mercy on me. A confession text people have reached for across centuries, when the soul feels heavy and needs words to stand up again. The scandal and the song are bound together. Power and penance, a fall and a return. Now, let's step across the threshold of that rooftop and try another door. What if David never met Bathsheba? On that same rooftop, we picture a pause. The king notices beauty, then remembers loyalty. He thinks of Uriah by name, valiant, foreign-born yet fully embraced, a reminder that David's men were a mosaic, not a single color. He turns back inside. The night sighs and moves on. No summons leave the palace. No secret letter to the battlefield. Uriah fights another day and lives. Right away, the map shifts. Without the Bathsheba scandal, there's no cover-up, no silent complicity among officials, no prophet forced to expose a crime. David's public honor stays unfractured. He's still a human ruler, flaws, impulses, plans, but the rupture that let whispers fracture the walls never opens. What changes inside the house of David? That question is delicate. Human choices weave together with prophecy and consequence. In the canonical story, Nathan's words were sharp. The sword will never depart from your house. In our hypothetical, we aren't rewriting justice. We're imagining a path where that particular judgment doesn't fall because that specific wrong wasn't committed. Could trouble still come? Of course. Families don't need a scandal to find their fault lines. But the direction and the intensity often depend on one keystone moment. Remove it, and pressure flows elsewhere. Consider Amnon and Tamar. In the original story, David's indecision after Amnon's crime creates a vacuum, and Absalom fills it with vengeance. In our imagined path, David's moral footing isn't cracked. The king who wrote laws about justice sees a son violate those very lines. Without the dead weight of his own secret shame, David acts more decisively. He protects Tamar openly, exiles Amnon from court, and pursues real restitution. It's still painful. It's still a family torn. But it isn't a slow-boiling silence. That decisive moment denies Absalom the mantle of justice deliverer. he remains charismatic and wounded. But the narrative that gave him a banner to raise never takes shape. The knife that carved a schism in hearts never finds its groove. Uriah, meanwhile, continues upward. The Hittite veteran commands deep respect among the 30, David's elite. He becomes a trusted field general and a bridge to other non-Israelite allies who have thrown their lot in with David's kingdom. That matters, because David's rule was a coalition long before it was a crown. Uriah's presence reminds everyone, this throne can honor honor wherever it's found. Now the succession. Here the story takes a striking turn. Without Bathsheba, there is no Solomon. Some might say, then who builds the temple? But before we get there, who wears the crown? David's firstborn is Amnon, disgraced and removed in our timeline for the harm he did. The second is Chileab, also called Daniel, born to Abigail. In the texts, Chileab almost vanishes. Perhaps he died young, perhaps he stepped away. In our alternate path, let's imagine he lives quietly, often in the background, raised by Abigail, remembered for clear eyes and a steady hand rather than spectacle. We picture an older David looking over the sons who remain. Chileab, careful and bookish; Absalom, electric and mercurial; Adonijah, handsome and ambitious. In the original timeline, Adonijah moves first, and Bathsheba's swift action crowns Solomon instead. In our scenario, there is no Bathsheba to orchestrate, and there is no Solomon to select. But there is Nathan the prophet, there is Zadok the priest, there is Joab, there is Benaiah, and there is the council of elders who remember the covenant and the weight of unity. David, sensing the time, names Chileab as heir. It's a surprising choice to courtiers who prefer spectacle, but not to anyone who has listened. Chileab does not charm a crowd the way Absalom could, and he doesn't seize the chariot the way Adonijah would, but he believes in the old simple words, justice, mercy, walk humbly, and he believes in steady building more than fireworks. Absalom, denied the Avenger storyline by David's earlier justice, fumes but lacks momentum. Adonijah eyes the courtyards and tries to gather a celebration prematurely. The priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan cut it off. The horn sounds for Chileab. The day after the crown touches his head, Chileab does two things. First, he meets with the elders from the northern tribes and asks what would help them feel seen. He hears a word that will echo through generations. Give us rest. Second, he walks to the tent where the ark is kept and bows a long time, saying nothing, as if asking for a blessing older than kings. The temple question returns. Who builds the house for the name? In the canonical story, that honor goes to Solomon, the man of peace who, by treaty, wealth, and labor, transformed Jerusalem into a marvel. The price was high: conscription, taxes, an empire held together by splendor. Under Chileab, the plan is humbler and later. He convenes craftspeople and priests. He studies David's gathered materials and the instructions David believed he received. He hires builders, but not in waves that break families. The temple that rises under Chileab is beautiful, but less vast, more intimate. It shines, but it does not glitter. It invites. Courtyards welcome pilgrims without overwhelming them. And here is a consequence we sometimes miss. Without Solomon's many foreign marriages, fewer high places and imported gods enter the court. There are still neighbors. There is still curiosity. Israel still lives among nations, and its people still wander. But the official, high-profile blending of altars that pulled hearts in different directions is not lifted up as a royal example. The tone of national worship stays focused, if not spotless. Because it's never spotless, this is still a human story. Now, flip to the economic page. Under Solomon, the building projects glowed, and the people felt the weight. After Solomon died, they asked his son, Rehoboam, to lighten the yoke. He refused, and the kingdom shattered. In our imagined history, Chileab never tightens the yoke in the first place. He stretches projects over time. He strengthens local judges. He keeps the army lean and the festivals lively. The north still grows proud, the south still clings to Jerusalem, but the reasons to break apart never harden into inevitability. The unity survives the handoff to the next king. A generation later, an already unified realm faces the same storms of history. Aram to the north, Philistia to the west, Edom and Moab watching, Egypt calculating. But a kingdom that has not split can negotiate from strength, not from panic. Prophets still cry out against injustice. In any world, leaders drift. Yet their words land on one court, not two rival capitals. The story doesn't become easy, it becomes coherent. Culture changes too. Without Solomon, do we lose the wisdom traditions? Many sayings are tied to his name in the texts, as are Ecclesiastes and the Song. In our alternate line, the wisdom schools still flourish, but their books carry the names of a circle rather than one legend. The Proverbs of the elders become a living collection, updated by scribes in each century. They are less golden and more grain-brown, practical, village-scented, a little less grand and a little more usable. People still memorize them. People still pass them to children. The tone is different, like a flute instead of a trumpet. And what about the songs? Without the Bathsheba scandal, Psalm 51 as we know it may never be penned in quite that way. That's a real loss. Religious communities for centuries have leaned on, "Create in me a clean heart," when they had no words. In this timeline, the prayer of repentance comes from a different moment. Maybe David after a battlefield mistake. Maybe a later king realizing he's treated the poor as numbers. Maybe a nameless worshiper who poured their grief into a song that somehow stuck. The melody changes, but the need for mercy never does. Court politics shift in subtler ways. Without Bathsheba, the institution of the Queen Mother takes a quieter form. In the canonical story, Bathsheba sits at her son's right hand and advocates. In this timeline, the role exists, but diminished. Advisors gain ground, scribes gain voice, and the court depends more on councils than on one royal mother's influence. That slightly lowers palace intrigue, which does something extraordinary. It raises the level of everyday debate. More voices in the room, more friction, fewer coups. Far downstream, something else changes that many viewers may immediately think about. Later traditions about a promised heir in the line of David trace through different branches of the family tree. In one telling, the line flows through Solomon. In another, through Nathan, another son of David. In our scenario, if David never marries Bathsheba, neither Solomon nor that Nathan is born. The hope for a future king wouldn't vanish. It would simply root through a different son, a different lineage, interpreted by different communities. The promise would feel the same, rooted in justice, rooted in a shepherd's heart. But the names on the genealogy would change. That's a sensitive thought, and it's one we hold with respect. We're tracing possibilities, not rewriting anyone's faith. Pause with me in the city street. Smell the bread, feel the dust. Hear the children running past a doorway where a scribe is copying laws onto a fresh scroll. Imagine a lifetime without a civil war cutting the country in two. Imagine a temple with fewer tears but deeper echoes. Imagine a proverb that doesn't glitter, it guides. For tens of thousands of ordinary people, this world is a little less heavy and a little more steady. Mid-roll moment. Which ripple surprises you most? The idea of a united kingdom that never splits, or a humbler temple that quietly shapes faith? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more respectful cinematic what-ifs like this, tap subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's push the timeline further, because history always tests ideas. Without the split, northern hills and southern valleys remain parts of the same story. When Assyria rises like a storm in the east, the kingdom meets it as one. Perhaps they pay tribute earlier and avoid destruction. Perhaps they fortify together and endure longer. The prophets still speak fire, because injustice still creeps into courts. False weights in markets, bribes under cloaks, land fenced by the greedy. But their fire is aimed at one house and one people, and reform can either sweep across the whole land or stall across it. Sometimes unity makes repentance easier. Sometimes it makes it harder because everyone thinks someone else will do it first. Military strategy also looks different. With Uriah alive, his cadre of veteran fighters holds critical border towns with discipline and care. Young commanders learn from a man who knows how to balance courage with restraint. When a border skirmish turns hot, Uriah insists on clear lines. No needless cruelty, prisoners treated humanely, victories not shouted into the wind as threats. That reputation echoes. Neighbors may not love a strong Israel, but they respect it. and respect softens some of the edges of envy. At the same time, without Solomon's constellation of alliances by marriage, the kingdom's diplomacy is simpler. Fewer royal banquets with exotic tongues, fewer envoys swapping riddles in cedar halls. Jerusalem becomes a quieter capital, less of a showcase, more of a workshop. Some travelers find that less dazzling. Many citizens find it more honest. The golden age shifts from gold to good. Less showy, more stable. It's worth considering the cost of what we've removed. David and Bathsheba's story is not only a scandal, it's a mirror. It confronts the abuse of power with prophetic courage and preserves a record of repentance that refuses to flatter a king. If our world never had that story, generations might miss a hard, necessary warning about desire dressed as entitlement. They might idealize David into marble instead of remembering he was made of breath and mistakes. There is a strange, severe mercy in a sacred text that refuses to hide its hero's failures. In our alternate world, that lesson would have to arrive another way, from another fall, or through wisdom taught rather than pain recorded. Would we listen as closely? Maybe. Maybe not. And yet, the tenderness we discover in that repentance psalm, the cry for a clean heart, doesn't need a scandal to be true. People find need for mercy on their own, in quieter sins and softer failures. Perhaps in our alternate world, the culture of confession is less dramatic and more daily, less about a single king's cry, more about a community's habit. The sacrificial system, the festivals, the weekly rhythms, all of these already handed people ways to return. Without the shock of David's collapse, sparser but steadier paths of repentance might simply remain the norm. As our imagined centuries roll by, archivists catalog proverbs by theme. Temple singers keep a repertoire that leans less on royal biography and more on pilgrim stories. And children in northern towns grow up without the reflex of seeing southern neighbors as rivals. When they draw maps in school, they don't have to label a dividing line between two kingdoms. They still argue about who grows the best figs. And somewhere in the records, the name Uriah stands tall to the end of his days. Not a tragic note, but a testament. A soldier whose loyalty was matched by the loyalty he received in return. The people tell his story when they teach new recruits. Your life is not a piece on a board. Your life is a promise the king must keep. We should be honest about uncertainty. History is a living web, and if you lift one thread, others pull in unexpected ways. Could Adonijah have started a coup anyway? Yes. Could Chileab have faltered? Of course. Could a united kingdom still have stumbled into idolatry, injustice, and exile? Absolutely. Human hearts carry the same weather beneath any sun. This scenario doesn't imagine a perfect world. It imagines a different set of pressures, a different distribution of sorrow and stability, and a nation that might have walked a little longer on one road instead of breaking into two. So we return to that rooftop. One look, turned aside. One path, quietly chosen. The scandal never breaks. The psalm takes a different form. The crown passes to a quieter sun. The temple rises, smaller and strong. The yoke never tightens enough to snap the country in two. Generations learn to argue and reconcile under one flag. And the great promise of a shepherd king's heart flows through a different branch of the same ancient tree. In the end, this what if isn't about erasing a story. It's about tracing how deeply choices ripple, especially choices no one sees. Whether on a rooftop in Jerusalem or at a kitchen sink today, the turning away moments, the quiet yeses and nos, don't only shape our lives, they shape the lives around us. That's the gentle wonder here. Not a miracle of spectacle, but a kingdom rewritten by a decision that leaves no headline, only a different dawn.